Yes, Virgo, this one is for you. So, that's you, Virgo, right there. And this is Tarot Lumination with your love and relationship report for October 2017. It's only understanding that there's you, Virgo, a significant other, and the relationship itself. A relationship would be a third entity with its own identity, energy, and vibration, meaning and purpose, and all of that. So we're going to use what I like to call a crucible spread, and you'll see as it starts to play out. Now, cards were already well shuffled in advance, but I'd like to take it to the last second for you so that you are a witness. No jumpers, no flyers, no oracles, no reversals, nothing, just basically a story. That's what's coming out of this. We're dealing with the energy. We're not telling the future. We're not telling you what decisions to make or how to do it. It's just giving you some perspective here, okay? So make the best of it, of course, Virgo, which is what you would naturally do anyway. And you'll see as we go along. We're going to jump right in just a moment here and then do your reading. Okay, here we go. All right, we're going to cut and cut again. There we go. You'll see in a moment. Okay, this would be you, Virgo, and your energy. This would be a significant other, their energy. Okay, this would be going deep inside of you, Virgo, to the almost subconscious, perhaps, and the same with a significant other. This would typically be a chosen relationship. Someone, a person of significance where there's already, let's say, a degree of integration between self and other, the point where you can officially say you have a relationship. Okay, so this would be the relationship here. This would be the momentum. Now, can you see, hold on, let me pull that back a moment. Can you see what we're trying to do here? This is a crucible. This is a bowl shape. And the whole idea of the crucible in a really healthy marriage is that both parties invest into the relationship to make the crucible itself really strong. A crucible is a container that can withstand intense pressure, the kind of pressure that can occur inside a relationship. And obviously, if you have a really good container and crucible, then the relationship has a chance of enduring without being oppressive or anything like that. It's just a good, solid, strong relationship. And in a healthy relationship, of course, you would conduct everything through the relationship itself, as opposed to one-on-one, face-to-face. In the simpler form. We're going to look at this card in just a second. That's the weather. It permeates the whole situation through October. And of course, you're going to take advantage of that, make the best of it so that you're not a victim of the weather. And, if it's bad weather, doesn't mean you have to feel bad. If it's great weather, doesn't mean you have to feel obliged to feel awesome. You're just going to make the best of it. And you have, look, the Five of Cups here. So like in surrounding, let's just say in some cases the weather can be like a reflection of your own inner condition, but it can also be literally your surroundings in such a way where if you take a very, very cool, calm, and detached look at your world, your life, and your surroundings, and despite how everything appears to be, what your senses and deep heart energy is telling you is that there's a lot of grief and sorrow and sadness in the mix somewhere. Whether it is apparent or whether it is buried and whether it's in denial, that energy is there. And it needs to be acknowledged and understood and respected. Okay, this is not something that's so trivial that you can just set it aside and pretend it's not there. That would be the energy of pushing things under the carpet that really need attention. If there is some serious loss or grief or sadness that's going on in a relationship situation or the larger context of the relationship, it needs to be understood and accepted, acknowledged, and no matter how painful that might be, because it's very important to reveal things, to heal them. So if the energy of grief, sorrow is present and you can feel it in the surroundings, it's very important to acknowledge that so it does not own you. All right? Because, don't worry. We got two little cups here waiting on the sidelines for when you get through all of this. All right? Now, again, that's the weather. It doesn't mean it owns you, but it is there. It has to be acknowledged, all right? Let's have a look at you, Virgo. So this is like with the Three of Pentacles here, like as your, let's say, your outward self. It's like, let's just call it, you are a work in progress. You yourself, Virgo, are a work in progress, where you understand that you put out a lot. Okay, you do everything to the best of your abilities, the best of your skills, with the best of intentions, the best reasons, purposes, the best ambitions, and in a very, let's say, diligent, honorable, respectable way that deserves to be valued. And in return, it's very nice when you are appreciated for that in such a way that it feels like a team effort, where you are highly appreciated by the others around you, and that gives you motivation and incentive to continue to be who you are and conduct yourself the way you're doing, because it's very evidential with the pentacles here. It's very evidential. It's very tangible. In other words, the tasks that you do, the actions that you undertake, and all the intentions behind them have tangible, visible value in your relationship and in the surrounding, let's say, environment of the relationship. Now, it can also indicate here that you might be questioning the value. In other words, how much am I truly being valued by my others, and how much do I really truly appreciate and value my others, my significant others in my life at the moment? And also, again, we can break it down to the individual. Like, there's you being the dutiful Virgo, taking care of business, doing what Virgos do so extremely well. It's taking care of what needs to be taken care of in a very orderly, precise, effective way that works for everybody. Classic Virgo energy. Being of service in a way that's of great value to others and is appreciated, and it's mutual. Sometimes it's not highly appreciated. Sometimes Virgo energy is not highly appreciated by others because everybody tends to take it for granted. And that's a little bit sad in many ways, because it leaves Virgo often wondering about their own self-worth. Like, gosh, I'm doing all this for everybody and everything, and I'm beating myself up, and like, almost, what's the point? Does anybody really understand me? Does anybody really appreciate me? I love you guys. Do you love me? I love you. Do you love me? I'm putting a lot of work into us and our life and our world and our relationship. What are you doing? So we'll have a look in the moment, but it seems like you're being diligent and thoughtful and conscientious in ways that are very practical and down to earth, and you're just getting on with it, and you're just treating your circumstances and situations as, let's say, just another day on the calendar where you're getting through, because that's what you have to do. That's what Virgos do. You bite off each day and you go through it in a very methodical, practical way that is effective. Okay? It is work, but it feels like a work in progress, where there is a question. I feel like there's a big question mark hanging over you here, Virgo, about the value. How much are you valued? How much are you being valued? How much, and so on. Let's have a look at the other. Okay, I feel like the reading is running away with me here. I'm just letting you know that. I want to make sure that things are calm and we go through this in a gentle manner. Let's have a look. Okay, well, you might be dealing with a significant other who feels, for some reason or other, and it might not be obvious at all, these energies both feel very subdued and quiet and personal and private from here at Tarot Illumination. And it might be hard for you to even, Virgo, to even figure out what's going on in the context of a relationship right now, because you might be feeling as though you're losing someone of great significance, where there is or was a lot of love. Okay, and you're just literally minding your own business like you've always done. You might have a traditional behavior of continuously investing and working in the relationship, working on the relationship, and continuing to build a relationship as a work in progress, which is a very healthy approach to relationships, by the way. It's really important to understand that relationships do need work, they do need attention, they do need regular maintenance, because they themselves are typically a work in progress. Relationships themselves grow and evolve and change, just like you, just like the other, and just like a plant, and or a child that grows. And it has certain core identities that don't really change, but there are other things that change on a continuous basis, and that needs work and continuous attention. Now, with the other over here, radiating the energy of the Eight of Cups, they might be in a very, let's say, calm, subtle way, uh, in a very, they might not even be aware of this themselves because there's a lot of lunar energy here, and it might be very closely related to the recent lunar eclipses, where there's this very powerful energy of moving on, and there's no going back in life, leaving behind a lot of things, places, people, aspirations, beliefs, understandings, values, whatever it is, in order to evolve and go further on your own spiritual journey, your own deeper, higher understanding of who am I and why am I really here? I really, really need to know that. And so for you, Virgo, this could indicate that in a very soft, gentle way, you might feel as though you're losing someone of great significance, despite your work, despite your efforts, where it where with these two energies combined, if these were the only two cards in the reading, it would definitely trigger the sense of doubt. That's why I felt the sense of doubt, the big question mark next to this, because I didn't foresee this, but I felt it, let's put it that way. And now this card coming out here with the Eight of Cups um, leaves me feeling a little more relieved that, not relieved, but more, let's say, uh, vindicated in having mentioned the energy of doubt here about is all your effort and uh, work in progress worth it? Because if you're losing someone of great significance and they've already started to move away in terms of soul energy, in other words, you might still have a significant relationship where everything is still a work in progress, but at the soul level, and we haven't even gone into the other person at the deep soul level yet, but uh, at the soul level, the way it would be perceived from the outside looking in, they might be moving on in some way spiritually. It doesn't necessarily mean they're leaving the relationship, but there's definitely a large gap beginning to form here in the between yourself and another. And it might not be, you might not even be able to put it in words yet. It might only just be occurring in terms of feeling, because it's like they've already moved on. They're already moving on their own soul path, their own process of self-discovery and spiritual evolution. And that can mean having to leave something behind of great love, great value that was historic, let's just say, like a really big deal for them, perhaps for yourself. If this is them in the context of the relationship as opposed to just them on their own journey, then it could indicate that they have a lot invested in you and the relationship and the love and everything. And yet, despite all that, there's this energy of, well, I might as well move on because I don't have any choice. I have to move on because this is now officially history. And for all the love that we shared, um, it, time moves on. And so they might be getting prompted to move on despite your um, efforts at teamwork to keep things, let's say, um, healthy and normal and clean and clear and just functional, very, very functional. So let's have a look deeper down inside of you. Okay, well, just be very, very careful here with the Seven of Swords here. Be very, very careful about hurting yourself in the process, undermining yourself in the process in the way that you're relating to a significant other, because you might be putting out signals where you don't even know this. You might not even be consciously aware that you're putting out signals of, let's say, what would be a tasteful way to say this, where there's a little bit of deception going on, a little bit of betrayal, a little bit of sneakiness, but there's no desperate, really harm intended, because your intentions are very pure and simple and straightforward here, and yet deep down, it's like there's something. In other words, it's almost like you could be deceiving yourself, and you could be deceiving another in the process. And it's also an indication here with the Seven of Swords that um, if this kind of energy is coming out of you, you need to be very careful and very aware that it is actually there, and be honest about it with yourself and others, because it's very easy for you to get yourself into trouble if you think you can just breeze along through as though everything is going to be okay just by keeping things uh, in balance, by just doing the routines that have always worked in the past. Because at the soul level, at the apparent soul level of where they are, and we're not looking at this yet, but where they are, they may be sensing. Look at it this way. Can you see how we're connecting the dots here? They, the significant other, may be sensing that they're losing you. And you might be trying to hide that by trying to be very, very, let's say, clever, thoughtful, conscientious, discreet, very, very, very extremely careful in your behavior. I'm trying to put the positive spin on the Seven of Swords here now, so it doesn't sound like it's too demeaning towards you, Virgo. In other words, you might be doing absolutely everything you can to the best of your ability, being as smart as you possibly can, and realizing that you're in some ways in a very, very awkward situation, and you're doing everything you can to get through it without, let's say, causing too much collateral damage on their side or for your side. But this is very deeply hidden, and yet at the same time, I don't feel, as your reader here, Virgo, I don't feel that their behavior would be this way unless they were already sensing this inside of you. In other words, you might be acting in ways where they are sensing that there's something going on here behind the scenes with you, Virgo, that is not working for me, this other person, to the point where I can feel it as heartbreak, heart loss, and the energy of moving away because of, let's say, perhaps there were, um, long-term issues that have bubbled up to the surface over a long period of time that could be perceived as like not acceptable. This is not acceptable. Don't know how long this has been going on, but if all of this behavior here is more or less about just trying to keep things working properly and efficiently, and you're not feeling appreciated by the other, then it might be because deep down inside, Virgo, things are seriously out of whack. Seriously, seriously out of whack, to the point where you feel almost forced to behave in ways that are not honorable in the way that you would normally like to be fully honorable and pure, the way Virgos are. So if that's happening and that's coming out of your aura a little bit, and even though you might not want it to, obviously they might be sensing it, in which case they might be thinking, well, what's the point of me being here if this is what's actually going on? Because they might not want a shell or an illusion or a relationship that's based on going through the motions. They want a loving relationship. And if it's not really there anymore, it's not really working, then maybe they have a reason and a right to move on, because they do. So we're going to go looking in. So in some ways, Virgo, remember, this is your reading about you. It's not a couple's reading. It's not you and the other out there talking to Tarot Lumination. This is you, Virgo. It's all about you, your relationship with a significant other. And this is the weather around you. And what I'm feeling, let's go back to this for a moment, is that the sense, if there's a very, very subtle but very deep sense of grief, sorrow, sadness here, deep grief and sadness because of a lack of love or brokenheartedness, and it involves, let's say, Virgo, you can sense it over there in that, in some way, let's say there's you, Virgo, but you can sense that they are moving away from you in terms of love and heart energy like that. And that could trigger the sense of grief and sorrow inside of you. But at the same time, this energy of sorrow and grief can also be what's being in the weather around you, could be the weather that's being radiated by their own um, feelings that the relationship is deteriorating or not where it should be because of things that are no longer acceptable in your behavior, your actions, your ways of being, to the point where they realize they have no choice but to move on. So they could be grieving. They could be in deep sorrow themselves, but they might not be expressing it. They just might be, it might show through their actions, but not their words, for example. So let's go deep inside the other. Okay, well, it might, with this, with the seven, with the sorry, the 9 of Wands here. I'm trying to call out all the names of the cards as we go because I keep forgetting, and some people like to just listen instead of watch. So Virgo, with this significant other over here, deep down, they may be struggling in many ways that are very similar to your own deep internal struggles, because it looks like in both ways there's a lot of deep internal strife going on here that is not being addressed. Okay, so you're dealing with it as best you can in your ways, that are literally your best efforts. You're using every skill and capacity that you have to try and do this in a smart way that works for everybody in order to hold on to something that may have already been lost. Okay, and where the moving on has already happened. And in their own way, the significant other may be, I mean, just, you can almost look at it as a drama here, where the significant other has already reached a point where they're kind of maxed out. They could endure, they could probably endure for significant times here, because it could be that the thing we've described has gone on for some time, where there's a lot of, let's call, role playing, or living through appearances, or living according to habits and behaviors that are just kind of very deeply ingrained into a situation, where it's reaching the point where, you know, I don't know if I can handle it anymore. I've reached the end of it. I'm reaching the point where I'm feeling beat up. I've already put a lot into this, and whew, is it worth going on anymore? I guess I could keep going. I do have enough in me, because obviously there was a lot of love. There might still be a lot of love, but right now there's an awful lot of grief and sorrow. And I have a feeling it's coming mostly from over here, but it's affecting the whole relationship, and it's affecting you, Virgo, where you could be feeling their grief and sorrow, even though they're not expressing it, only through their actions. And in their actions, deep down inside, these would be subconscious behaviors and things that are percolating to the surface, almost like the energy of an aura. Just like this could be a part of your auric energy too. We're not all beautiful martyrs and saints all day, every day. Our auras shift and change and flux all the time, and you might have a very beautiful, glowing aura in most circumstances, but there could be some like deep fractures, deep flaws, where your own weaknesses and flaws are becoming apparent. No judgment here, but this is more like you, I feel, doing your best, your very best, to figure out what to do and how to do it, to, let's say, preserve the love so that you don't get the walk away. And in their own way, they're trying to figure out how to sustain, how to hold on, considering everything that they have invested when it comes to love and matters of the heart. And yet it feels from here at Tarot Illumination that it's almost like, what's the point here? What is the point? Because you're doing everything you can to perhaps fix something that's not fixable. And they're doing everything can to fight for something in a situation, circumstances, and hold their own integrity, wondering whether it's worth their while or not because of the potential loss. In other words, if they've already lost you in heart and soul and spirit, and all that's happening over here is going through the motions, then that could certainly trigger a lot of heartache and grief and sorrow over here, to the point where they're realizing after all this time, this is it. What are we going to do? Let's have a look at the relationship itself. maybe that'll change everything completely. We'll see in the story in a moment. Okay, well, remember, this is your reading, Virgo. Maybe you're getting your wish. Maybe, and this is going to sound, I don't want to hurt your feelings, Virgo, but maybe this is what you've been wishing for and wanting and hoping for, in that maybe this needed to happen. Maybe this needs to happen. Maybe there needs to be a bit of a walking away and a separation for a while for people to understand themselves and each other and get some space. Sometimes that happens in a relationship. Sometimes the healthiest thing to do is a parting of the ways, and that can be almost like a sense of tremendous relief, where like, oh my gosh, deep down, if I'm really, really true, really, really honest, as opposed to pretending everything's okay. In other words, be really, really honest with yourselves at the core. And let's just say the relationship itself is doing the talking right now. The relationship would say to you, as if the relationship, because the relationship was probably obviously very important and very valuable and full of cups at some point. Okay, otherwise we wouldn't, but we won't. We have this now, and it's almost like we already also know that at the end of the day, true love will prevail. It's just that, is it going to happen here? Is it going to happen now? Because if, I know typically the Nine of Cups would be a very jovial card to have on its own, but in this reading, the way it feels to me is that deep down, deep down inside both parties here, you, Virgo, would, as painful as it might be to say, admit to oneself or admit to them and the other, that it might be the best thing we could wish for is for a parting the ways in right now, or at least to give each other some breathing room. And that would be the most loving thing to do. That would actually allow the love to come back in again, but in a way that needs to be reformatted. Okay, so that the relationship itself has great value, in that there's obviously great love in the relationship. However, the love as it is known at the moment, in its current understanding, is expired. That's how it feels here. And instead of trying to like manipulate and fake it to keep it all going, instead of battling to keep it all going and dealing with the energy of should we part ways or something. See, Virgo, right now I'm reading this as the whole thing as opposed to just you, but it's still your relationship. It feels like a really healthy thing here would be like to be honest and say, oh, I wish we could just, let's say, do what we both know has to be done here, because that'll bring a lot of love. In other words, I don't know if any of you guys have ever lived through these things where you've had a very deeply loving relationship, but for some reason you've figured out that it's actually kind of expired and lived its life. And as much as you love each other, you have to do that, parting of the ways, knowing that's the most loving thing you can do for the other, for yourself, and for the relationship. So because you can't, this is not really sustainable, this type of energy. You're just recycling and trying to, let's force and fake things, okay? It's not healthy in that way. Let's have a look. What's the momentum here? Okay, because look, this is actually very beautiful now, Virgo. In some ways it's very tragic, but it's also very, very beautiful. Because if there are an awful lot of unspoken pains and sufferings and tragedies and grief and issues that can now be identified, you can actually put words to it. Well, it's because of this and this and this and this and this and that and that and that things are degenerated to the point where they are right now. But it's very, very important to acknowledge that. Do not be scared of the Ten of Swords, okay, Virgo? It's actually, in some ways, it's a beautiful blessing here. It's almost like a purging. My feeling here for you, Virgo, is that this is a really, really good opportunity to like face the reality that you might be dealing with a very, very deeply loving relationship that for one reason or another, or perhaps many, many reasons, has finally reached the point where it's no longer sustainable in its present form. And the best thing you could possibly wish for is to wrap it up, call it an end, accept the grief, accept the sorrow, and move on, because it affords both of you guys a new chance, a new horizon, a new like a new life ahead for everybody. Okay, not just you, Virgo, not just them, but like anybody and everybody in your world around you. It's almost like this massive release of pain and tension, because that's the end of it. Because it's like the crucible can't take the pressure anymore. Okay, we're going back to the crucible on the understanding. It's almost like the crucible here, the relationship itself here, has reached its maximum capacity of endurance, to the point where essentially it's broken beyond repair. The cracks have already happened, and as much as you try to repair the cracks, and much as you fight to hold it all together in your own ways, separate ways, it's actually essentially done with, because it's you, Virgo, in the context of relationship and how it affects your whole life and world, can't go on any farther this way. So in some ways, it's a beautiful thing. It's a blessing. It's just being able to live with a little bit of grief and sorrow for a while as this manifests to the truth of what it is. I'm not saying this is your absolute truth. You're going to watch for your sun, moon, and rising and put that all together. But you've heard the story that I have to relate for you here. I hope I didn't touch any serious nerves or trigger any major bust ups or anything like that, but I have to call it out as I see it. And I think it's potentially a very loving, healing situation here for everyone. Like a wonderful purging, a wonderful clearing, and it brings a lot of clarity, okay? Heading out of October into the future. Let's put it that way. All right, Virgo, thank you so much for letting me read for you. Make the best of October. Bye bye now.